The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. By the words of the Gospel, may our sins be wiped away. Well, our Gospel today is a direct continuation from last week's. Last week was, your righteousness must surpass that of the scribes and the Pharisees. This week, Jesus goes on to explain how exactly you should pull that off. Offer no resistance to one who is evil, turn the other cheek, all that good stuff. So, in light of that, I am going to continue my homily from last week. We are supposed to act differently than the rest of the world because we see the world through a different lens, the lens of faith. We should always act as if all people are loved by God, and that morality is not determined by popular opinion. Popular opinion morality, that's essentially might makes right, but for daily behavior. Public opinion morality has no problem condemning, shaming, and judging its enemies. We are constantly hearing people talk about how valid it is to utterly destroy, or failing that, discredit a faction, a group, or an individual. And that fails the basic morality of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which very sensibly says that the penalty should never be more than the damage done. The punishment should fit the crime, essentially. And the reason that we have this modern morality thriving today is because we are, as they say, living in a post-truth society. My favorite little mini parable about that goes something like this. No one cares about the truth anymore. That's why accusations are on page 1 and why redactions and apologies are on page 17. What did or did not happen is a distant concern. You and I, we see things a little differently, don't we? To quote every dad ever, we should know better. Our character is not determined by how aggressively we defend our allies, it's how we treat our enemies. So imagine something with me for a moment. Imagine that reward and punishment are not factors in morality. So if you do a good deed, you won't get credit for it. If you do a bad deed, you will get away with it. Even if that is the way things work, do you really want to be a merciless person deep down? Are you comfortable being a person who does not turn the other cheek, but condemns and belittles others when given the chance? I know a guy who has completely given up on this whole merciful turn the other cheek deal. In fact, he took this idea of modern morality to its ultimate logical conclusion. He woke up one day and made the conscious decision to completely cut himself off from his brothers and sisters and from their children, his nephews and nieces, about 12 people in total, about a dozen people. And he did this for the sake of political disagreements. And also, he ordered his wife, his children, and his grandchildren to no longer interact with the rest of the family. Now that seems to me like the exact opposite of turning the other cheek. And it was devastating for everybody involved, as I'm sure you can imagine. Now, I get news about this fella every once in a while. I know that he feels bad about what he did. But he buries and suppresses that shame and guilt at every opportunity, normally with some pathetic line of, yeah, I know it was hurtful, but I've got to stand by my principles. Yeah, right. This man may be significantly older than me. I'm going to play the dad card. He should know better. And I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because his pride won out over love, loyalty, and respect. And his life is a pale shadow of what it once was before. And it just breaks my heart when I hear stories about this. You know, a family just fragmenting, because all I can do is pray that one day he snaps out of it and reconnects with these people who love him in spite of their disagreements. So to bring all this full circle, it kind of boils down to that ultimate question. Are you willing to see the world through the lens of faith with God, with mercy and turning the other cheek and all that good stuff, or will you view the world like a cynical fatalist without God and who will show no mercy to anyone because mercy is for the weak? Mercy is for the weak. Ridiculous. Now, it's worth bearing in mind. This man that I'm talking about, he is a military vet, and he saw some pretty heavy stuff during his tour of duty. And his faith took a big hit as a result of that. That's a shame. I know how easy that can be. It's a fairly common story. But what happened is that cynicism and anger, over time, it just chipped away at his faith, hope, and love. As the years went on, he became more and more difficult to talk to interact with, because that's what happens when you turn your back on God. You don't become a new person overnight. What happens is your virtue diminishes little by little over time until, like this guy, you wake up one day and mercy, compassion, patience, joy, they cease to exist within you. And all that's left is your money and your political party and the distractions of modern entertainment. I mean, you even lose the ability to love someone authentically as you did before. If anything, I feel like my story today is pretty good proof of that, because we're talking about a man who forced his wife to no longer see her nephews and nieces for the sake of his political views. What a joke. That is a shell. That is a husk of what life is supposed to be. That is what a life without mercy really looks like. A life without righteousness, a life without God. And God doesn't want that for any of you. Every single one of you deserves better than that. And the way to make that happen is, one, realizing that God does belong in your life. You need him. It may take a few years for the symptoms to show, but you will wither away and starve without him. And the second step is to realize that popular opinion morality, it's for the birds. There is no truth there. There is no wisdom to be found there. But the key to a happy life and a good character is about imitating the life of Christ to the best of your ability. You're not going to make 100% success on that. Nobody ever does. But Christ's style of mercy, generosity, and non-resistance, that is better, wiser, and more righteous than anything the world can offer as an alternative. So I dearly hope that you take this gospel to heart. Turn the other cheek. Be merciful. Do not retaliate against those who do you wrong. Because ultimately, in the end, the only thing you'll achieve is adding to your own suffering and increasing the distance between you and Christ.